Good morning. Good morning and welcome. I'm Helen Foss, and on behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. It's not. This helps, doesn't it? Thank you. Welcome again. I'm Helen Foss, and I am delighted to serve as worship associate for this morning's worship service. Welcome, no matter the hue of your skin or the origin of your ethnicity. Welcome, no matter whom you love or where you are on your spiritual journey. You are welcome here. If you're new to our church, I invite you to check us out on http://firstuuwilm.org and sign up for our e-newsletter that arrives every Friday in your inbox, just like clockwork. Now, a request. For those of you sitting in front of me, please turn to the camera on your left and wave to the people who are sitting out in the great beyond of the internet. Now, please turn and greet the people around you with a smile. They waved at me frantically to start. Thank you. That was lovely. Lots of smiles. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but in the barrage of hate and negative stories in our news recently, it's frankly left me in a bit of despair. Now, despair means loss of hope. So you can imagine how encouraged I was to read Reverend Larry's sermon title for this Sunday. Reverend Larry, this is what I needed now. Perhaps all of us do. Definitely morsels of hope. Ways to rethink our world, to find hope, to keep on going, to serve our families and our communities. This week, many of us attended Judy Gavadas' memorial service and came away awash with our memories of her love and many contributions. And that service swept me back to the first time I came through these doors in 1966 to attend a memorial service for the father of one of my students. I knew I'd found my spiritual home, a place where I am challenged, welcomed, stretched, loved, always growing, always with hope for the future. Reverend Larry, I'm still on that journey, so grateful to be doing it with you and my fellow Wilmington UUs, and that hope is essential to keep us going on our quest. Now let us center our hearts and minds and begin our service with our prelude.
Thank you, David. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Larry Piers, the minister here at the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. For visible accessibility, I am 6 feet tall, graying hair, glasses, green stole, and a black robe. Glad that you could join us during this Thanksgiving weekend, whether you're joining us here in the sanctuary or online. I'm going to share with you this call to worship written by Lois Van Leer and adapted. We gather not because we must, but because we may. We gather not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We gather in connection across culture, distance, class, and language. We gather so that our religion may be a beacon of light and hope and justice. We gather around this soon-to-be lit chalice flame to kindle our hearts and our minds and to reignite our spirits.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it. This reading is The Ember of Hope by UU Reverend Lisa Day of Savannah, Georgia. She writes, "What if sometimes it's not about a light in the darkness? What if sometime it's about sparking potential into possibility and possibility into existence? What if sometimes the flame that burns in the chalice of our faith is nothing less than an ember of hope and nothing more than love set ablaze? What if sometimes all we need to do is follow this flame, one among scores, hundreds, thousands of steadily flickering flames across the land and among so many people on the way to justice and into the land of peace? What if we dare to kindle that chalice? Now, please stand as you are willing and able to sing hymn 360, Here We Have Gathered.
Here we are.
Please remain standing and join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
As Unitarian Universalists, we find truth and meaning in various places and within the world's religious traditions. Today, we begin our series of holiday celebrations and traditions with the beginning of our lighting of our Advent wreath, joining Christians and others from around the world to celebrate this gradual unfolding of light. Michael is going to come up and light our first Advent candle. Word. Go ahead, you can blow it out. We had to share a moment of hope together, wondering whether indeed the candle would light. And in the first Sunday of Advent, the theme is that of hope. And so I share this reading from John Buren's and Rebecca Ann Parker, adapted from their writing. Hope rises. It rises from the heart of life, here and now, beating with joy, beating with sorrow. Hope longs. It longs for good to be affirmed, for justice and love to prevail, for suffering to be alleviated, and for life to flourish in peace. Hope remembers. It remembers the dreams of those who have gone before and reaches for connection with them across the boundary of death. Hope acts. It acts to bless, to protest, and to repair. So we gather today with that hope for hope. So may it be. Amen. So for our time of prayerful meditation this morning, I want to share this poem, More Love, by Rosemary Watola Tromer. As you listen to her words, listen to her longing, and listen to the longing that may resonate within you as well. If sorrow is how we learn to love, then let us learn. Already enough sorrows have been sown for whole continents to erupt into astonishing tenderness. Let us learn. Let compassion grow rampant like sunflowers along the highway. Let each act of kindness replant itself into acres and acres of widespread devotion. Let us choose love as if our lives depend on it. Let us choose love as if our lives depend on it. The sorrow is great. Let us learn to love greater, riotous love, expansive love, love so rooted, so common, we almost forget the world could look any other way. More love, more love. The shared silence that follows, let us bring to heart and to mind those places that are crying out for more love. Those places within ourselves, those places in our wider world, those places among those we love and care for. Let us sensitize ourselves to their longing for more love in this silence that follows. As has become our custom, as we begin our prayers, the people, I light this single candle to represent all of the cares and concerns that we have for our wider world, for the world that we live in and share together, for the places in particular that need more compassion, more care, and more understanding. And so as I light this candle, you may think about all of those places in our wider world first, before we then turn our attention to those things that are more personal and interpersonal. It seems that one candle is not enough to hold all that burdens our country on this day, all that cries out to us from our earth and from the peoples of the earth. But we light this one candle to hold our common concern together. Now, what particular concerns might you have for yourself, for a loved one, things that are closer to home that you're holding in your own heart? We'll take time now to speak those briefly and loudly in this room, or if you're joining us online, you may write your concern in the chat. We'll start on this side of the room. What's a particular concern that you want to hold up for us to hold alongside of you today? Okay. So friends, Lori and Deb, who've returned from a trip and are feeling ill. If I heard it correctly. Yes, Jacqueline.
My friend's infant granddaughter is ill.
Okay. A friend's infant granddaughter is ill in the hospital. A cousin, David, who has multiple illnesses. Anything else? Homeless people. How about in this section? Is there a particular concern that you might have for those who are close to you, members of this congregation, friends, family, or even yourself? Lois. Friend Linda, who's waiting for some lab results, biopsy results. Someone was sneezing at the same time you were talking, and it was hard to hear it. Yes. Sorry, say that again. What else? A good oncology report. We're doing concerns now. And concern, okay. We're concerned alongside of you. Yes. What else? Okay. Foster care kids who are on their own for their first Christmas. estranged family members not willing to reconcile, friends with dementia, Thanksgiving travelers on their way home. May they be safe. Immigrants, documented and undocumented, human beings that live at risk for their own safety and security. Friend's son, Isaiah, who was in an accident, is now in recovery. Anyone in our area going hungry this time of year? Okay. Former husband's son who's suffering from dementia, I think. Your former husband is suffering dementia. Sons are caring for him. Okay, thank you. That makes sense. All righty. Anyone else? Okay. So maybe with your hands held out like this, we might feel and hold alongside of those who have spoken the concerns that they have and bring them close to our own heart with a simple movement and open our heart to compassion and care for all of those concerns that were mentioned and those not mentioned. We also take a time every week, just a little time. We try not to get too carried away about sharing some of the joys in our life. And so if we were to do just a quick sense of some of the joys that we're also bringing into this room, what are some of those joys? We'll start here. Thanksgiving with family. Celebrating today with family. Good to see you again. Surprise visit from 2 teenage granddaughters. Okay, we're here. 3 new kittens. Do they have names yet? Victor, Dimitri, and Nikolai. Perfect names. What other joys? Yes. Jessica's out of the hospital. Okay, Johnny's cooking dinner for her birthday. You're all invited. A third great grandchild on the way. Any other joys? How about here? Is there a joy that you'd like to share with us? Okay, great day at Longwood with family the day after Thanksgiving. Let's close our eyes for a moment and just savor what that experience must have been like for Anne and her family. What other joys?
The Buckeyes beat that school up north.
Okay. And Sally? The organ master playing all the colors of the organ today. Okay. Any other joys? So let's feel the impact of one another's joys as it lightens our own spirit and as we companion one another through sorrow and joy. May all the names that were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing on this day.
Our reading this morning is by Rosemary Tola Tromer, who also wrote the meditation that you heard a few minutes ago. She writes, I am so grateful for the rubber spatula. The way it sits quietly in the drawer, yet is always ready for action, is game to scrape the walls of the blender or to fold chocolate chips into cookie dough. It evens and swirls the frosting on cake and welcomes the tongue of a child, adults too. In a sharp world, it knows the value of being blunt. It knows that to smooth is a gift to the world. Some people are knives, and I thank them. Me, I want to belong to the order of spatulas, those who blend, who mix, who commingle dissimilars to create a cohesive whole. I want to spread sweetness, to be a workhorse for beauty, to stir things up, to clean things out. I want to be useful, an instrument of unity, a means, a lever for life.
Thank you, Helen. So the spiritual teacher Ram Dass said, if you think you're enlightened, go home for Thanksgiving. I recall that many in our congregation were feeling quite anxious about gathering with friends or family over last year's Thanksgiving after a particularly polarizing and divisive presidential election, anticipating some of the real or imagined tensions that could be around last year's Thanksgiving tables. I offered some very specific advice last year. I suggested that if the Thanksgiving dinner began to feel stressful and began to veer into some uncomfortable or even combative directions, that you develop the spiritual practice of saying in that moment, could you pass the potatoes, please? Let's all say that. It could come in handy another times. Could you pass the potatoes, please? Some of you told me that you actually had to engage in that spiritual practice over last year's holidays. I'm always willing to give spiritual advice whenever I can. As you know, these holiday times can be full of wonderful, deep connections. They can also be, for some, a little too much connection or just about enough connection. And I've been holding in my heart this year those in our congregation who have lost a member of their family or a dear friend. In that case, the connection, a cherished connection, may be longed for as an enduring blessed memory. Whatever the case may be, I hope that this holiday time of Thanksgiving was fulfilling or satisfying in its own particular way, and that you found some meaningful moments. If nothing else, this Thanksgiving time is a time to be in each other's presence and a time to be in the presence of gratitude. The practice of gratitude doesn't depend on everything being perfect. Instead, the practice of gratitude is about an orientation towards life that says, even though this is going on, I still find some place in my heart, no matter how minuscule it might be, for gratitude to be present. To be clear, I'm not saying that the practice of gratitude is about imagining things are different than they actually are. That would be spiritual bypassing. The practice of gratitude is about looking reality right in the eye and finding the presence of gratitude alongside of whatever else may be weighing down on our heart or heavy on our heart. This was one of the lessons that we drew from our reflections on our recently deceased member, Judy Gavados, whose life we celebrated this past week. Given everything that was going on, she still, as one of our members reminded us, found ways to practice gratitude. This practice of gratitude, in spite of it all, or even because of it all, is a simple message. It is one simple example of the broader theme that I want to explore with you today about our inherent human capacity to choose how to respond to this moment, whatever this moment may hold. I have called my reflections morsels of hope because even in the midst of whatever is going on, I want to encourage us to practice finding morsels of hope and to discover together morsels of hope that can sustain us and nurture our spirit no matter what, and that can make us available to be a much needed presence in our relationships with others and to be a much needed presence as a congregation, as a house of hope in this community. I believe that we risk forgetting this embodied truth. But I know as I look at the bodies before me, each of us have found ways to persist in finding morsels of hope, each in our own way. Now, I didn't come about this message easily. The message found me recently in some unexpected ways. This has been a heavy year, to say the least. What an understatement. Like me, you may have grown weary of the ain't it awful situation that we seem to find ourselves in day to day in this country. What we feared would happen has happened to people, no matter how they might have voted. Whatever we never imagined happening has occurred. When real lives are at stake, when the well-being of children and families, elders, and others at risk, we are all of us impacted. We've gone beyond those superficial divisions of red and blue, progressive and conservative. We've arrived now at the deeper questions we must begin to ask ourselves about this situation that we are in. They are all variations of one question beckoning to us now. Who do we want to be and become? That's worth repeating. We face a moral situation, not merely a political one. The truth of the matter is, no matter what your opinion or position was or is, now we are all in this together. And we all must find ways to respond. Now, I don't need to go through the litany of real lives lost or threatened, of deals being made that put our climate at even greater risk, at the ways the ever-changing definition of immigrant is being used to target people in our communities, or at the disruption and dismantling of infrastructures of health and well-being that are intended to serve the common good. I don't need to go through the litany of all of these again. When it gets to real pain, rather than imagined pain. We are all in this together. You understand what I'm saying here? We can choose to numb ourselves, retreat into ourselves, or overwhelm ourselves, yet we are all in this together. As the year has gone by, I recognize that in spite of it all, we still can see that hope rises, that hope longs, that hope remembers, and hope acts. For some, the opposite of hoping has become commonplace. However, one author shared his encounter with this as he writes, "A few months ago, I had lunch with a young lady who said, 'The difference is that in your generation, you had something to believe in. But in ours, we have nothing.' She didn't say it bitterly, just as a straightforward acknowledgement of her worldview." This author has also recognized this spirit arising in our country, what he labels nihilism. He elaborates, "A nihilistic culture is defined by the drive to destroy, by the will to power, and that definition now describes," he claims, "the American nation." He pointed to our culture's pervasive demonization and fear-mongering, with leaders feeling no need to negotiate with the other side, to just decimate it. Do you recognize that pattern? I hadn't identified this before reading that article in the New York Times by a, quote, conservative, David Brooks. But then I had my own unexpected encounter with nihilism when I was in a meeting with a group of people who have been meeting online for a series of sessions to think about our next chapter of life as we approach retirement. Do you imagine why I was in that conversation, Helen? I just happened to be there. We had done some reading together about the spirituality of aging and about ways to approach our encore post-retirement chapter as we sought to articulate to one another our responses to the question, what's next? One woman in the group had a particular allergy to some of the spiritualizing of aging in one of the books. It just wasn't her cup of tea. I totally understand this. I'm not a fan of spiritual bypassing either. However, this woman seemed to go a step further. She downplayed any optimism about the future, any hope in humankind, and any belief that there was any molecule of the divine within the human or within life, or any reason to have hope for the future. After hearing this from anyone, I might have said, "When's the last time you had something to eat? Are you feeling hangry?" Nevertheless, this is a fair enough opinion for any one of us to have, but when you look at the shape that we're in right now, it's a plausible attitude to have, but this attitude, I claim, is a choice. It is not a given. I couldn't utter the words at the time. I wasn't facilitating the group. Some of the leaders actually congratulated her because of her honesty. Yet the conversation still felt incomplete to me. You see, the question for me was not about whether to agree or to argue her position. The question I wanted to ask was, what are you going to do about it? Where does this opinion lead you in your life? I came to realize that we have more than enough doomsaying and doom scrolling in our lives these days, but to what end? I feel a sermon coming on. I'm going to control myself. My reflection on this, what seemed to be an incomplete conversation, led me almost instinctively to do some rereading of Viktor Frankl. You probably know his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which tells of his experiences in concentration camps. The book is considered one of the most influential books and has sold over 18 million copies globally. He was a professor of neurology and psychiatry and the developer of an approach to life and psychotherapy called logotherapy. Some people think that Frankl's ideas were developed through his experiences in the camps. In fact, he had already formulated much of what became logotherapy before he was imprisoned. A version of his manuscript about this perspective, his life work up to that point, was sewn into the coat lining the day he was captured. When he had to discard his coat and clothing the day he arrived at the first camp, the manuscript was also discarded. So if anyone would have been driven to nihilism, it would have easily been those who were deported and detained in those camps where they witnessed the most brutal behavior toward human beings. Frankl spent his time at the camp teaching some of the ideas in his book, his manuscript that was discarded, to those who were facing a heart-wrenching, spirit-depleting experience in the day-to-day in the camps. He noticed what it meant for those who faced the situation to recognize that whatever was happening, they still had a choice on how to respond. They still had the human freedom to form a response. Rereading Frankl, I realize that he speaks more and more to our time, in which some are manipulated into nihilism and despair, which is a familiar symptom of the dynamics of rising authoritarianism. When we begin to feel we have no choice, when we begin to feel we have no hope, then authoritarian dynamics take over and we just comply rather than create and fashion our own responses. I'm pleased that the Unitarian Universalist publishers, Beacon Press, have printed many of Frankl's books, including collections of papers that were recently translated. One of those is Embracing Hope. I'm grateful and proud that our Beacon Press has kept Frankl's work alive. When I think about how our own Unitarian Universalist principles and practices affirm acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations and a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I believe that Frankl provides a guide for discovering meaning rather than succumbing or giving in to hopelessness or meaninglessness. Frankl, rather than claiming to be optimistic or pessimistic, said his view was activistic. I like that distinction. It resonates with the feeling that I had after the woman in that group expressed her hopelessness, her pessimism. And I would characterize myself as mostly optimistic when I'm well fed. But what are you going to do about it? That was the question that arose in me after hearing this woman's particular version of her own despair about what it means to be human, about the situation that we're in. Activistic is a wonderful word because it displays to us that we always have a choice on how to respond, how to act in whatever situation we might be in. Can I get an amen? In other words, whatever kind of person we are or society we become is a matter of choice. Who do we want to be and become? That's the question that's at the center of our lives this day. Frankl had a strong belief that peace could prevail when individuals recognize this and come together in a shared commitment to a common meaning. Perhaps This analogy that Frankl used helps to convey his point of view about our capacity to always prevail in our will for meaning. Frankl used the image of a hayloft or a barn into which, as the annual farming cycle draws to a close at the time of the harvest festivals and Thanksgiving, but ultimately over the course of our whole life, we store the fruits of our labor. Outside, we perhaps see only the harvested fields and the forlorn stubble from the cut crop, but on the inside, abundance reigns. Thus, people become the producers of their own past. Life comes towards us from the front and passes through us. In a sense, we are constantly plowing along its path so that true meaning lies not before us, but around us and behind us. What we have created, our legacy, is our enduring manifestation, the true realization of ourselves, which no one can ever take away from us. In other words, meaning is available to us at any moment. We can capture within ourselves a storehouse, an abundance of meaning, no matter what shape the fields around us may be in. It can be found through making a difference in the world through our actions, our work, or our creations. It can be found in experiencing something like truth or beauty, or encountering someone with a sense of love. It can be experienced in adopting a courageous and exemplary attitude in situations of unavoidable suffering. Now, I happen to have found a local exemplar of this will to meaning that Frankl talks about. Perhaps you have met her. She's Elizabeth Morrow, and she's the owner of Centerville Cafe. It was Peggy Doss that first invited me to join her at the Centerville Cafe, and I occasionally swing by there again and again. Elizabeth was following her passion to be of public service, and she entered the 2017-2018 campaign for U.S. Congress, only to have her hopes dashed when the 5 counties that were definitely gerrymandered got reapportioned. She says that this decision was good for the people, but like a game of musical chairs, my chair was gone. My race was over. She writes, devastated, doesn't describe how I felt. For months, I could hardly get myself to move forward each day. How could I recover from the loss of a lifelong dream, not to mention all the sacrifices I had made along the way? What was the purpose of my life if this wasn't it? I felt so incredibly vulnerable and lost. I felt like a loser in life and a loser in my dreams. How could I have been so wrong? So she took a pause. She used that pause, that interruption. She talked to a lot of people. She came to realize something about her experience that still gave her meaning and purpose. Frankl is the one who's attributed to saying, between stimulus and response, there is a pause. What we do in those pauses that happen in our lives is we can make use of them to find our own meaningful response. So she talked to a lot of people, and she came to realize that her most rewarding experiences were when, during the campaign, she would sit across the table, sometimes literally from people who had different opinions than her. In the context of the conversation, she realized that oftentimes they could each recognize their common ground, even when they had different positions. She tells the story in her short book, The Civil Graces Project, and she outlines her newfound purpose and meaning for life. In the book, she explores these civil graces that some today are finding so easy to dispose of, to dispense of. Graces such as hospitality, courage, generosity, freedom, humility, equality, respect, gratitude, and so much more. I've enjoyed getting to know her and discover through her memoir how she continued to create a meaningful life even when she thought she had only an unlived dream. She found a new dream because she had what Franco calls a will to meaning. I believe that we always have a choice on how we want to show up. I believe that how we show up impacts not just us, but those we encounter. This capacity to pause and to choose our responses instead of simply reacting brought me back to revisiting some of the reading that I had done of Viktor Frankl's work, and particularly that sentence that I've mentioned. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. How we use that space is so important in these times. Which brings me to these verses by Rosemary Watola Trummer, who outlines for us a choice, a way of being. She said, "Some people are knives, and I thank them, but I want to belong to the order of spatulas. Those who blend, who mix, who commingle dissimilars to create a cohesive whole. I want to spread sweetness, to be a workhorse for beauty, to stir things up, to clean things out. I want to be useful, an instrument of unity, a means, a lever for life. Are you willing to join me in this order of spatulas? Yes or no? So may we join together in this spatula brigade and be a force of resistance to hatred and compliance in the streets, to be a force for good in our daily interactions, and to make a difference in our world again and again. With some cookies alongside, so may it be, we can provide morsels of hope for this world. So may it be. Amen.
This is the time in our service when we reflect on what this church means to us and how we can support it to continue for it to be the thriving force in our lives and in our community. At the beginning of the service, I shared how we found this community, this church community, and how much it has meant to me. I invite you now to take a moment to again reflect on what this church means to you and your family. What difference has it made? What kind of meaning have you discovered that it has brought into your life? During the offertory music, there will be a slide showing how to make that gift, from putting your cash or check in the offering plate when it's passed here in the sanctuary, or mailing it or contributing online for those of you at home. I invite the ushers now to come forward. And please join me in dedicating our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives in these, our offerings. The chalice extinguishing words this morning come from UU Craig Rowland, an active UU lay leader from Salem, Oregon. He writes, "As we extinguish this flame, may we carry its warmth into the world, not as a memory, but as a promise that you deserve a place where your voice matters, where your laughter is treasured and your silence is honored. You deserve a circle that sees your scars and your strength, your doubts and your radiance, and holds them all with care. Let us be that circle for one another, a community of fierce welcome, wild grace, and radical hope. Go knowing you belong here. You always have."
So before our benediction and our closing hymn, I want to remind you that today at 12 o'clock, I think we'll gather here in the sanctuary. That's most expedient. We have a couple representatives from Peace Drums, which is a wonderful response to the conflict in Palestine, Israel, by bringing children and youth together from those areas to make music and to build hope together of a brighter future. Now we are concluding our month-long emphasis on the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee project of our congregation and congregations around the country. And Doyle has something to say about that prior to Bill Hardam coming up.
Okay, I have a full page of notes, and I think I'll set them aside. But yes, we've had a month long of focus on what? That's right. And last week, we had an unusual experience. We had Mary Catherine Mourn and Laura Randall here as our guests. And Mary Catherine, she first of all complimented us. And then she gave us something to think seriously about. And so very quickly, what did she compliment us about? Okay, I can't hear you all, so I'll just repeat what I think she complimented us about was that we are one of the UUSC's strongest congregations. We're in the top 5. So pat yourself on the back or pat somebody close to you on the back, because that's quite an honor to be in the top 5 supporting congregations to a program like the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. But then she gave us a challenge. She indicated that we're in the top 5 because we have so many individuals who are making contributions to UUSC. And would you believe what you may know what that number is? The number is over 100. And I'm tempted to ask you all to raise your hands if you've made a contribution, but that might be awkward for those who haven't. So I'll just say congratulations to every one of you who's taken the time to make a donation, write a check, however you've done it, to the service committee. Because I think the service committee is one of the reasons that we have hope as individuals and as a congregation, because they are focusing on justice, building justice, planting seeds of justice. And when we give to the service committee, we are participating in justice projects around the world. They are working in over 20 countries, and they are working with over 70 partners, working on human rights and social justice. They're not part of the UUA, and sometimes that's misunderstood. They are an independent organization, and they depend on our gifts, our donations, our contributions. So the challenge that Mary Catherine gave us last week was, okay, so you have 100 people who are donating. How about raising that to 150? Think we could do that? Yeah. What was that? Yeah. Okay. And I think we could too. And I think it would be great if we did, because that indicates that we have hope, that we are not stuck in the mud, so to speak. We are planting seeds of justice. We are making progress by our cooperation and work with UUSC. So I think making contributions to UUSC is the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do. Now, this banner, it's been here, this is the 5th week that it's been here. It won't be here next week because we are ending our program. It's called Guests at Your Table. And we're not disappearing. We'll just be in the shadows, continuing to work. And we hope that you will continue to contribute to UUSC, if not every week, maybe every month, or at least a really generous donation at least once a year. Thank you. Oh, and use this envelope if you need to, and we have lots that we can give to you if you need them.
Okay, Bill.
Greetings. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that we are presently in Lenape-Hocking, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Lenape people. Now, I invite you to study this picture of the front of our church. Does anyone see anything different? Nothing? Well, here, take another look. Let's get a closer view. What do you see? People? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. Well, still nothing? Okay, let's look at the fence, the hand railing. At the street end of the fence, there's a small sign. See that now? Well, let's take a closer look then. How about the next slide? There we are. So this is the slide that shows what it actually says, that little plaque at the very end of the hand railing out there. It's a land acknowledgement plaque, and it reads, "The land First Unitarian Church occupies is part of Lenape Hocking, where the Lenape people," I have a hard time with that, "lived in harmony with one another for thousands of years." You might ask, why are we doing this now? Well, back in 2020, the General Assembly of our denomination called for congregations to research, identify, and acknowledge the indigenous peoples historically or currently connected with the land occupied by those congregations, and find ways to act in solidarity or even partner with those indigenous peoples. It's taken a while, but we are responding to that call due to the initiative by the Environmental Task Force, begun back in the spring of this year. In our case, it was the Lenape tribe who occupied most of what is now Delaware and the parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey that are within 50 to 100 miles of the Delaware River. It's the salmon-colored area on this map. And you see we're right in it. The story of the interactions of the Lenape with the colonizers is a long and sad tale, which I won't go into now. But the good news is that some Lenape survive. They're scattered around the country in about 4 different locations and some in Canada. But there is a tribal unit in southern Delaware, which hopefully will find some ways to interact with as we seek ways to act in solidarity with or even partner with those indigenous peoples. Finally, I want to acknowledge the encouragement and support of Debbie Zarek, Nancy Flanagan, the Board of Trustees, and the executive team in this endeavor. That's all we can get into now. If you have questions, catch me later. Thanks.
For our benediction today, I've chosen these words from Anne Lamott. She writes, "Gratitude begins in our hearts and then dovetails into behavior. It almost always makes you willing to be of service, which is where the joy resides. It means that you are willing to stop being, and I'm quoting, such a jerk. When you are aware of all that has been given to you in your lifetime and the past few days, it's hard not to be humbled and pleased to give back." Let's join together in singing our closing hymn, "What Wondrous Love." It's hymn number 18 in the hymnal. The words will also appear on the screen.